Hey everybody, welcome to Meals for the Mind. I'm Jen Bragan. I am the Canine Behavior Education Coordinator at Women's Animal Center. And this is one of our classes that we would normally teach in person, but with everything being shut down for the virus, we're bringing this one online for you. So this class is all about canine enrichment, mostly food enrichment in this one, but we'll talk about a couple other things. And let's get started. So we're going to start out here with a quote from Jean Donaldson in her book, The Culture Clash. It says, "Free food in a bowl goes against the genetic legacy of dogs." So we're going to talk about kind of what that quote means and where it's going. All right, so the class objective is to learn about canine enrichment that can be provided in the home via lecture. So that means you guys are going to listen to me talk for a little while here. So what is enrichment? Enrichment encourages thinking, learning, or exploring through mental or physical stimulation. Enrichment should be variable, complex, and/or challenging to be the most effective. Why food enrichment? So this lecture is going to focus on food enrichment. Food is a primary reinforcer. You don't need to teach dogs to like it. We all like food. Everyone likes food, except for maybe that guy that invented Soylent, but pretty much everybody else, we like food. One thing to remember with that, if they won't work for the reinforcer, the enrichment isn't worthwhile. So think about that in terms of your own preference. So would you like to do a Sudoku puzzle? Would you prefer to surf Facebook? Do you want to get up at 5 in the morning to go fishing? Which one of those, maybe all of them, maybe none of them, would be reinforcing to you? Which one are you willing to work to get? Okay? So why does my dog need enrichment? So some of the issues that can be addressed with adding enrichment or food enrichment specifically would be inappropriate chewing, digging. It can help with crate training. Maybe you've got to do some medical rest after a surgery, a spay, a neuter, something like that, and put the dog on crate rest to make sure that they heal properly. Overexcitement from guests coming to visit, the wintertime blues, the summertime blues, or just because it's fun. Who says we can't do things for our dogs just because they're a good time? Part 2, why does my dog need enrichment? So from what we know about wild and feral dogs, they might spend 70 to 80% of their day foraging for their food. Our domestic dogs, not so much. Typically, we get some food either at the store or delivered by Chewy, and we dump it in a bowl, and that's the end of it. So we also know about dogs, in addition to foraging, that when they chew, you'll see that was on the previous slide as one of our issues to address. When they bite things, when they lick, when they dig, or when they exercise, they get a boost of endorphins and experience something similar to what we would call a runner's high. So think about every time you've been to the gym or run a marathon or worked out or did some yoga and you felt really good. Dogs are able to get that same chemical release just from chewing on a fun toy. So I want to make this part of the lecture a little personal. I want to give you guys some tales about some dogs that I've known and how I've used food enrichment in those situations. And hopefully some of you might relate to some of these things. It might help you see things clear or might understand where we're going with this. So our first dog is Bully the Bull Terrier, one of the most original names on here. He had some resource guarding issues. So if you had a bowl of food on the floor, it could be dangerous for you to be around it. At any point that he would sense that maybe you were too close, there was a risk of getting bitten. So what we did for him is I would make him frozen toys. Basically, I would use those in place of his dinner or his breakfast, and I would put him in his kennel with that to work on. That gave him something to do, and it gave me the freedom to be in my kitchen when I lived in a small apartment, and we could easily move around each other. He wasn't upset because he was too busy working on it to worry about guarding a bowl. So our next dog is Faith. She's a Labrador Retriever. She is a trained service dog. She is currently living with a veteran. When Faith came to my house for training, she was understimulated. She was bored. They are smart, working breed animals. They are, they'll wake you up at 7 o'clock in the morning and they'll have your taxes filed and your DVDs alphabetized and they are ready to go for the day. So Faith needed a little something extra in her day. Walks weren't enough. Working weren't enough. So for her, she started out in my house really struggling with any downtime that we would take as a family. So anytime we were sitting down watching TV, she would get agitated, she would get antsy, she would do some attention-seeking behavior, barking, pawing at us, things like that. For Faith, we began to freeze her meals in a slow feeder puzzle, and we put her to work. And I would make the puzzles. I did a little experimenting because this is kind of a trial and error thing. We would do some experimenting, and I found about 60 to 90 minutes was where she needed to be to kind of get her brain to settle down. So, we did some things for her, and that really seemed to help. The attention-seeking behavior stopped. We saw a big decline in inappropriate barking, inappropriate demanding attention, things like that. So the last dog I want to tell you about is the dog I have now. His name is Hustle. He's a pit bull rescue. And while he's not actively showing any signs of canine cognitive dysfunction or doggy dementia, he is around 9 to 10 years old. And that's the time when we might start to see those kind of symptoms. For him, we've kind of decided to be preemptive, and we offer him food puzzles at least once a day, if not for both meals. One, because he loves them. The man loves a snuffle mat, like a lot. And because it's good for his brain. It's good to keep those senior brains working, to keep them, focused on things so that they're not simply just sleeping all day, getting up, going for a walk, and coming back in. There's something a little more there for him. What are food toys? There's no official classification of food toys, so there doesn't seem to be a lot of agreed upon literature or research about these things, but I'm going to break them down for you into a few helpful categories so that you guys kind of get an idea of what's available out there. And each category is going to have both a commercial product that you can purchase if you'd like, or a DIY suggestion. So these can get kind of expensive if you were to just load up a cart on Amazon with everything that I'm going to mention, but there are some DIY recipes so that you guys can maybe start at home with some things you've already got. Okay, our first category is probably the most well-known, stuffable hollow toys. Commercially, you'll see the pictures of the Kongs there. The purple guy is a busybody. I think his name is actually the squirrel dude. He's really hard. You can see he's kind of got those little flanges inside. Those are super hard. DIY versions might be some toilet paper tubes, as you can see in the bottom photo there. Those are 2 toilet paper tubes stuffed with kibble and some wet food, and they're frozen in a coffee mug overnight. The photo kind of in the center there is a plastic container. Basically what we've done is lined the bottom with milk bones, put a mortar of wet and dry food, and froze it overnight. And then we pop it out. We've got a big old block. We like to call those pupsicles. So these guys are kind of your most common. They're kind of the most well-known, and, they're certainly a great starting point. Kong does have different levels of chewers. So the red Kongs that are pictured are kind of the standard. There are baby Kongs, and there are the extreme chewer Kongs that typically are a black rubber. All right, so let's go on to our next toy. Slow feeders. So there's a little bit of an office disagreement about the licky mat being in here. But some licky mats can accommodate an entire meal of wet food if your dog does eat wet food. So that is definitely an option for you. So starting at the left, you'll have Outward Hound Fun Feeder. That's those little puzzle guys. And if you remember when I was mentioning Faith, that's what we gave her. We would take a fun feeder and put her kibble and literally just a little bit of water so that it would freeze in a block, and put her outside with that. And that was her favorite thing. And it took her probably around 90 minutes. The licky mat in the center, those are a specially designed product. They are silicone rubber, I believe. Some people use silicone baking sheets. So if you see those, I guess they're like candy molds or baking molds. You'll see people using those. They typically are available at dollar stores. I would caution you, as those aren't going to be as strong. And if you have a dog who maybe gets frustrated by the licking and starts to chew, they could ingest that silicone, and that's not what you're looking to do. Okay, so the last image you'll see there is what I like to call a busy bowl. So all I did is I took a regular metal dog bowl and a little bit of peanut butter on a spatula, and I like to pretend I'm a Michelin star chef, and I give it a little spoon swipe on both sides, and I stick some treats in it. And then in the bowl itself is kibble and water. I was out of wet food when I went to make this item for the photo, so I just tossed a little bit of water in there, kind of to freeze the food in a solid block so that it's not just cold pieces of food. So those are something easy that you can make at home. You don't have to buy the licky mat or the fun feeder. Fun feeders are generally pretty affordable. They do make them for puppies. They do make them for adult dogs. So you can get a variety of sizes in those, and all this stuff is freezable. Licky mats and busy bowls are, I'm not going to say that Outward Hound fun feeders are bad for this, but I just think the other two are superior. Licky mats and busy bowls are good for baths. If anybody has ever had to give a dog a Chlorohex bath for skin, it's a particular dog shampoo that has to sit on a dog for 10 minutes because whoever invented it has never heard of dogs. So that has to sit on the dog for 10 minutes and you have to keep them entertained somehow. So I would suggest loading up your licky mat or your busy bowl with some peanut butter or wet food or mashed banana or something else that your pup likes. Give it a freeze and away you go. So the next item I mentioned when I spoke about Hustle are snuffle mats. You can pre-purchase or DIY these. They kind of simulate tall grass and provide an opportunity to forage. They can't be made too terribly hard, but they can be made trickier. So we see our dog there, our little kind of white shepherd looking guy. He's got a commercially available one. They tend to be a little on the pricey side. I believe that item's around $30 on Amazon. The large photo of the red and blue snuffle mat is a homemade one. And then you'll see the little dachshund looking guy is on a mat that looks a lot like sort of an infant's play mat. They are starting to make those. I would just caution you again with all of these toys to supervise your pups to make sure that they're not pulling these apart or ingesting little pieces of fabric, just to be sure that, you know, safety's on your mind with these. So our next category is puzzles. For puzzles, we have some commercially available options like Nina Ottison. You can kind of see in the assorted photo of her puzzles. She's got the dog tornado, the dog casino, all kinds of fun things. And those are freezable as well. Some of the ones that have little sliders and little kind of channels, you can put water in there, you can put wet food. Some of them are wooden and some of them are hard plastic. You would have to know, I guess, what substrate would be better for your dog. So if your dog's a tough chewer, you might want to go with one over the other just to make sure that that puzzle is going to stay intact. If you don't want to purchase a puzzle, you can simply make puzzles. I have examples of two. The first one is ye old classic muffin tin and tennis balls. The next one, we kind of have a picture of a border collie puppy, and he's got some veggies on a string. So either of those you can make with materials around your own home. So the muffin tin puzzle on the bottom, sometimes people cut the tennis balls in half. That can be a little challenging, and it doesn't really yield that much more of a challenge, but sometimes people will cut them in half and either freeze the tennis balls into the puzzle or use peanut butter to kind of stick them in there. This is the kind of thing that you can use your imagination, and the veggies on a string is kind of a newer puzzle that I've seen, and it seems to be a lot of fun. You can use any dog-safe vegetable. AKC's website has some pretty good resources on what's dog-safe and what's not if you have questions. Also, if you have nutritional questions, call your vets. Ask your vets for advice. Basically, you take any dog-safe fruit, vegetable, even treats that have holes in the middle. You could put Cheerios on it and hang them on a string and tie it to two chairs. You can see that one's kind of, I think it's tied to a chair on one side of the frame and a crate on the other, and let them go to town. Let them figure it out. Work those brains. So our next category is chew toys. So I kind of broke these down into some, subcategories here. We've got natural, meaning anything that comes off an animal the way it is, and it's ingested that way. So antler, hoof, pig ear, bone, things like that. Just a note on bone safety. Avoid chicken and poultry bones at all costs. So if you see chicken wing bones on the street, go around. They are too thin. They will splinter and break and get stuck in the dog's throats. And that is not a vet bill you want to get. Always monitor and remove bones when they degrade. So after your dog gives it a good chew, make sure you're taking a look at it before you give it back to them. It would be better for you to toss a bone out too soon than wait till it's too late and it's breaking off in shards. So our next category is composite. So these have some natural materials, some synthetic materials. Those would be things like greenies or busy bones like we have in the second photo here. And then we have full synthetic. So I have pictured there our dental dinosaur. The dental dinosaur is probably my favorite synthetic chew. It has a lot of nubs that are good for teething puppies. You can also fill the sides of it with wet food or peanut butter, give it a freeze so that it's a frozen popsicle. Nylabone makes a bunch of toys, the Galileo bone. The last photo there is my family's Christmas present to all my family dogs. Those are chicken strips. It was, I think, just a big family pack of chicken breast strips, and I dehydrated them. You can add dog-safe spices if you'd like. These ones happen to be plain, and they last, I think, about a month in the fridge, and you kind of just pop one of those bad boys out whenever you need it. Another category of food toy you may be familiar with are food dispensing toys. These are Kong wobblers that our little beagle friend there has. Tug-a-jug, it's kind of next to the beagle. It's got the tug toy. Magic mushroom, that one's not pictured, but those are probably my 3 favorite ones. The wobbler being kind of the easiest. It's sort of a weeble wobble. It's got a weighted bottom, and the top screws off, and you can fit, in the larger ones, you can fit about 2 cups of food in those, so enough for a full meal. And the tug-a-jug is particularly insidious in that if you take a look there, you put the food inside the clear chamber, you've got the tug toy, and the dog has to not only roll it around so that the kibble comes out, they've also got to manipulate that tug toy as well. So a couple DIY food dispensing toys you can make. We've got our plastic 2-liter bottle. The ones I have pictured are on a stand. So if you are a little handy and you wanted to make something like that, that's, some ideas there. People have made windmills out of them, all kinds of creative things. So the other one you can make is a PVC pipe feeder. This one's a little more technical. You will need to cut and sand off the PVC pipe. There are some end caps on there, drill some holes. But if you're so inclined, there's some ideas for you there. The next thing I want to talk about are destroy toys. There are few commercially available destroy toys, but they are lots of fun to make yourself. So you can see that little Stegosaurus stuffy there. He is designed to pull apart. His legs come off. I want to say they Velcro on. His stomach Velcros open, and you can put more fluff in. You can put the fluff that's been pulled out back in, and you can put those legs back on as many times as you can get them on. He's pretty cool, but if you wanted to DIY, cardboard boxes and brown paper bags are fantastic tools. You can make them as layered as you'd like. You can start small and build big, kind of Russian doll style. You can make it just one box. It depends on the pup. This is also something you can do to kind of simulate foraging, having the dog rip through those. I would recommend doing that in a non-carpeted area. That's just going to make cleanup easier for everybody. This is a good crate activity, a good garage activity, a kitchen activity, an outdoor activity, things like that. So what do you fill them with? Some of them are going to be self-evident. So your snuffle mats, your food dispensing toys, those are primarily going to be kibble-based toys. Your puzzles, your destroy toys, your slow feeders, your hollow stuffable food, those are going to kind of be where you can get a little more creative. So this is kind of the ratio I like to go with. You're going to take a base, that's going to be 80% of your filling. And that base might be kibble. It could be rice. It could be wet dog food. It could be kibble soaked in water to make a wet dog food. Then if you'd like, you can pick a solid. So dog safe fruits and veggies. I have blueberries and carrots and green beans listed there. You might use regular treats. You might use milk bones, dog safe meat chunks, boiled chicken, lunch meat, hot dogs that are nitrate free. And then you have a binder. If you want to think about why a binder, that's going to help make that puzzle a little more enticing and a little more challenging. So your binders tend to be filled with fat, they tend to be filled with sugar, and we want to go easy on those. So we want those to be 5 to 10% of our filling, but they're going to help keep the dog interested in the puzzle. So it's not just like, oh, I'm working for kibble again. We're going to use things like yogurt, cream cheese, peanut butter. Make sure your peanut butter doesn't have xylitol in it. That is toxic to dogs. Mashed banana, dog-safe baby foods, pumpkin, applesauce. Whenever possible, try to find products that have no sugar added or no salt added. If you have questions about nutrition, ask your vets. Ask if this is dog safe. AKC's website does have a good resource list of dog safe foods. Here we have an example. So say we're stuffing a Kong. We're going to start with the big part of the triangle down there, and we're going to put some kibble soaked in water. Since that kibble's soaked in water, it's going to kind of stick together a little bit easier and be a nice frozen chunk in our Kong. We're going to toss in some soft treats and some canned peas and carrots to make things interesting. And then we're going to seal the top of that Kong with yogurt. Okay, so we're going to use unflavored Greek yogurt is nice, but any plain unflavored, no sugar added yogurt will work just fine. I like to put Kongs inside a coffee mug to freeze them so that there's not a gigantic mess inside your freezer, but you got to do what you got to do. So let's talk health and safety. When you're using a new method of food enrichment, you want to supervise play for the first few trials. You want to make sure that the play is appropriate, that you're not seeing your dog destroy the toy in a way that, isn't intended to be. They're not eating parts of the Kong. They're not ripping up the licky mat and ingesting the silicone. Small pieces of paper, say you use a brown paper bag, like a lunch bag for a destroyed toy, a small piece of that isn't going to really do any harm, but you don't want large chunks and you don't want chunks of things that don't biodegrade, right? Food things that you want to avoid, you'll want to avoid nitrates, added sugar or flavorings, xylitol, chocolate, grapes, raw onion, raw garlic. When in doubt, look it up, ask your vet. They're here to help. Let's talk health and safety for humans. We're making high-value treats here. Maybe your dog's not shown any resource guarding. Maybe they've shown mild resource guarding or extreme resource guarding. You want to make sure that you're working with these things safely. So always build in a trade, because your first priority is going to be giving them a toy that they can just enjoy until it's gone. But if something goes wrong, some of it breaks, they start to chew parts of it, you kind of want to make sure that you're arranging a trade and you're not just grabbing things. That's how misunderstandings happen. You could toss some treats in the other direction, ask your dog to go find it, distract them, take away what's unsafe. That way everyone's happy and no one gets bit. So let's talk sensitive stomachs and restrictive diets. So the first dog I mentioned in my story time there, he, in addition to being a food guarder, had a sensitive stomach. He ate a mix of canned pumpkin, boiled rice, and salmon, which is disgusting, but he's a dog and he loved it. Those things together, pumpkin we know is very good for digestive health in canines. Make sure it is 100% pure pumpkin, not the pumpkin pie mix that is common around Thanksgiving time. You'll want to make sure that it is just 100% canned pumpkin. You can use just plain boiled rice. It doesn't need any salt or flavoring in the water, just plain old boiled rice. And fish-based proteins, I'm suggesting those because they are the least likely protein for dogs to have an allergy to. If you know that your pup has an allergy to fish-based proteins, you can switch that to boiled chicken, boiled turkey, boiled beef, things like that. Weight control. Mr. Hustle in our house now has recently gone on a diet. He was putting on a little extra weight. So we've incorporated green beans, carrots, dog-safe veggies. Those help your pup feel full while not adding a high caloric count to their day. So they're a good way to kind of cut back. Maybe your dog's a little heftier. We're putting on a little of those winter or quarantine pounds. No judgment, just add in some green beans. So restrictive diets. Mixing dry kibble with water to make wet food is a good way to avoid buying two kinds of prescription food. It's also helpful for limiting the amount of novel proteins if that's something you're concerned about in your pup. You can also ask your vet what would be a good add-in. So maybe your dog isn't on a hydrolyzed protein style diet where it needs to be so restrictive, but they may have some restrictions and your vet may have ideas for you there. You can also add supplements into some of your food toys. So for Faith, she was on salmon oil. For some of our older dogs that we've had, they've been on glucosamine to help with joints. We have simply mixed those in with water or dusted it on the kibble and put it in the batch to be frozen or mixed it in with the binder so that those supplements are a little more tasty. So a few more helpful tips. You can break the dog's allotment of kibble for the day into smaller parts, and that can give you more opportunities for enrichment. So there's no hard and fast rule that says a dog has to have only 2 meals a day. You can break their daily allowance into 3 meals, into 4 meals, however you want to get this across. So for Faith, for example, we used to give her a kind of quicker toy, and it was something that she could do while I was in the shower getting ready for work, for example. So I would give her a Kong wobbler or the magic mushroom and put her in the backyard. She was at our house during summer, and she would have a great time. And that would give me enough time to kind of get dressed, get ready to go. And then by the time she was done, she could come in, go in her kennel, and I could go to work. For Hustle, he does do 2 meals a day. We break up between 2 different puzzles. If he's feeling a little extra spicy, he gets his Kong wobbler and he gets to kick that all around the bedroom. Most days he gets either a food puzzle or a snuffle mat. You can even break your dog's food up into small parts and use part of it for training and keep that brain working that way. You'll want to also remember to keep the servings of fat low. Start off small and introduce new foods slowly and allow time for their stomachs to adjust. Some of you out there will have dogs with an absolute cast iron stomach and nothing will bother them. And some of you will have dogs where one blueberry is the end of days. So this is where, you're going to kind of enter into trial and error and you're going to just do what's best for your pup. As I mentioned a bunch, freezing can make puzzles last longer. Almost all of the types of puzzles that I listed back there can be put in the freezer, with the exception of snuffle mats. I don't know that would be any more advantageous, although if somebody out there wants to get nuts and freeze a snuffle mat, let me know how it goes. But most of those puzzles, the slow feeders, the stuffable hollow toys, those can all be put in the freezer. Things like food dispensing toys are intended to be challenging enough without freezing. One thing you'll want to remember is making this puzzle hard enough for your dog so that it presents a challenge, but not so difficult that it's not fun anymore. This is where trial and error is going to come in again, and you're going to need to kind of read your dog, see what they're into, see what they're willing to work for, see what's fun for them. Because as I mentioned in a previous slide, if the enrichment isn't fun, if it isn't worth working for, they're not going to do it, and the whole thing's gonna be a moot point. All right, so this slide says hands-on, and this is the part of the lecture where if you were coming to see me in person, we would make food toys for your own pups, we would make toys for the shelter pups, but since we're doing this virtually, if you have any questions, send me an email. Thanks for listening. This has been Jen at Women's Animal Center, wishing you an enriching day.